as we go. All right, so we're gonna start seated. So find a comfortable cross-legged seat. Morning, Maria. And just take a moment before we do anything else. So from your seat, just feel into the base of the seat. Just notice how it feels through all the places that you're touching down. What is your imprint like on the mat right now? And then we'll take the left thigh and we're just gonna gently guide it out of the hip. And give it a little external rotation. So it might not go very far. And then we'll bring the left hand just onto the thigh and just give it just enough pressure that your leg registers that your hand is there. And keeping that really light pressure, I want you to imagine that you could feel your way past all of the tissue, all the skin, the muscle, all the connective tissue, and get a sense of your bone. So that big femur bone, connecting your pelvis to your lower leg. And imagine you could gently guide that bone out. And your hand is like just a request. It's not like demanding. It's just a request. And we'll come back up to a seat. Notice the breath in your nose. And then we'll do the other side. So taking the right thigh, little external rotation, and then guide the thigh out of the hip. And then we'll place that right hand on the thigh. Give a little pressure. Can you get a sense of the bone underneath the skin, underneath the muscles? As if your hand could gently bypass all of the tissue and get right to the bone, and then imagine sliding that bone out. And then come back up to a seat and observe the breath in your nose. And then we're going to reach down and find the left sit bone. See if you can curl your fingers right around the inside edge of that sit bone. And then you're going to guide your sit bone diagonally back to the left. And as you move the sit bone back into the left, shift your pelvic floor in the other direction. So you're sliding the pelvic floor out to the right. And you can rest that left sit bone down. And observe the breath in your nose. And then we'll do the other side. So reaching down, finding your right sit bone. Might be easier to find one than the other. Curl your fingers right around the inside edge. And then you're going to guide that sit bone diagonally back and to the right as you shift your pelvic floor to the left. can set that down. Notice the breath in your nose. And how is the imprint on your mat? And so I'm going to assume for most of us, we're just much more grounded now than when we first sat down. So from this more grounded place, you could set an intention or a dedication for your practice this morning. As you choose your intention, that change how it feels under your skin. And then from the place where we curled our fingers around the inner edge of the sit bones, I want you to imagine you could drop down, grow down a pair of roots. And those roots make their way down through your mat, through the floor, through your basement, all the way down through the dirt, into the earth, maybe passing and kind of winding around other roots. There's one really giant tree in my yard, and I can just imagine wherever I am in my house, I can imagine that there's roots from that tree below me. So those roots dive down and then diagonally back, just like the direction that we dragged the sit bones. And with a sense of those solid roots, notice your breath. From that stability, can the sides of your spine rise up? And then feel for growing roots from the outer edges of your sit bones down. Deep into the earth. And then in towards each other. And maybe they find each other somewhere below you. And then feel two roots growing down off the back edges of your sit bones. Deep into the earth. And then slightly forward. Anchor somewhere down and slightly forward. And from that stability, can your back body grow bigger and more broad? Like a big, soft cape rising up behind you that you could snuggle back into. And then feel a pair of roots coming down off the front edges of your sit bones. Diving deep into the earth. And then anchoring somewhere slightly back behind you. And from that stability, can your front body kind of grow and fill up into the space of your back body. And so maintaining the connection of all of those roots, we're going to turn to the left. And rather than thinking about kind of cranking yourself into, well, take your twist however you would normally take your twist. So let's start there. And I want you to notice the effort that requires to turn to your left. And then feel into your right back waist, that whole right kidney area, back bottom ribs. And I want you to slide that area nice and broad towards your front knee. Your front left knee. So it's sliding across to the opposite knee. And then take your left back waist, that left kidney area, and broaden it out behind you. And really let the twist be driven by the backs of your waist. So rather than trying to do all this effort with your arms, bottom back body is actively turning you into this twist. Feel the back roots of your sit bones still anchored down. So your back body's growing big and wide. And from the front sit bones, your front body fills up into the back body. And then we'll come back through center. And we'll do the other side. So I don't know about you guys, but I noticed that when I first try to come into a twist, I'm doing so much of this effort with my arms. It really restricts my ability to breathe easily. So then if I take the left lower back, left back ribs, left kidney area, Richard Freeman would call this the kidney wings. You could almost even imagine a wing kind of sprouting out from below your left ribs, and then reaching that wing towards your right knee. And then you could grow a wing out of your right back waist, and that's going to reach back behind you. Back body is big and broad, and you can almost rest back into it. And the front body fills it up. And then we'll come back through center. And we'll take it into a forward fold. So just start to find like a hint of a forward fold and feel your back sit bone roots keeping you nice and grounded. And then take it to a place where you feel like, especially first thing in the morning, I noticed that, there's a lot of my body parts that start talking to me pretty quickly. And so just stop and listen. So when you come up to that like first point of resistance, the first place where your body, anywhere in your body is like, oh, I don't know. Just stop right there. And then just open up a conversation with that part of you, the one that's talking to you the loudest. And so when I'm having this internal dialogue with whatever part of me feels tight or cranky or angry, I usually start out with just like, thank you. whatever you've been doing that's made you so tight, I'm sure you were doing it for a reason. So thank you. I'm just looking for it. So Angela had said that she actually says, I just want to be here with you, which is lovely. I just want to be here with you, this part of me that's so cranky. So how do you hold that part of your body and your attention so that it does feel held, so that it does feel safe? And then what might happen is that area gets like a little warm, and then the intensity subsides, and then you can go in a little deeper and maybe meet a different part of you and start a new conversation. And all these little pockets of our bodies that feel tight, feel cranky, are often areas where we've kind of stored some old experience, some old emotion, some old physical, injury, protection. So our practice can be this really great opportunity to just slow it down and listen and address all these parts that maybe, you consciously or subconsciously pushed really far down and didn't want to look at, didn't want to feel into. Inhale, roll your way back up to a seat. And we're going to lie on your backs. You might want a blanket under your head. Just a folded blanket under your head. And we'll come into constructive rest. So knees bent, feet on the floor. Go ahead and hold your head. So you're going to interlace your hands right at the base of the skull. Let your head rest in your hands. And you're just going to encourage the base of the skull to move away from the neck. Maybe you turn your head a little to the right. Using your hands to do that so the neck can still stay relaxed. And then maybe you turn your head a little to the left. Let the head back down. Bring your hands right up to the top of the thigh bones, right where the thigh and the hips meet. And you're going to press forward as if you could move the top of the thigh bones closer to the flesh of your seat. And as you press the top of the thigh bones forward, it's going to tip your pelvis forward a bit. So your lower back might lift up off the ground. The top of the sacrum starts to kind of pick up off the ground. Keep your hands fixed, but imagine the top of the sacrum could then slide back down towards the floor. So what would have to release to let the sacrum slide back towards the floor? And then release the arms. Feel your back body spread out wide on the floor. Notice your imprint. And then we're going to roll over to the side. Knees up towards the chest. You're going to hold your top wrist and your bottom arm, and then just pull that arm away from you, turning your chest towards the floor. And then notice if there are any areas that are speaking to you in the chest, in the shoulder, in the upper side ribs. Can you put all of your attention right into where your body's calling for it? And when that initial chatter kind of subsides, that whatever was, calling out to you from this first spot, then maybe you take your top foot, your top leg, and bring it back into constructive rest. Can you do that without losing any of the turning of your chest towards the floor? You can feel your arm opening up space in your spine and your back ribs. Maybe that top leg moves even further, like it's moving into a Baddha Konasana shape. So you kind of roll to the outer edge of the foot. Maybe your bottom leg comes into constructive rest. So you're not forcing anything. You're not pushing your body into a place where you can no longer breathe or where it's hard to listen. So for any of the poses that we take this morning, if you notice that it's so intense that you can't really even be there, and you just back out. Give it some space. Kind of like if you were in a big argument with someone and it gets really emotional and it's really hard to listen, that you just have to kind of take a little break, back out a little bit, calm yourself down, and then maybe approach it more slowly. And then we'll unwind, come back to constructive rest. Take your arms down by your sides. Just notice your imprint. I'm always surprised on this one how it feels so focused on the back body, on like the area around the shoulder blade and the rib cage in the back, but then coming into constructive rest, such a chest opener as well. So maybe you notice that through the weight of your shoulders. Then we'll take it to the other side. So first, just rolling over, holding your top wrist with your bottom hand and giving it a pull. Pulling enough that you turn your chest towards the floor. And then you start that conversation. And so for me in my practice, if there's a goal of these conversations, it's like, how can I help you feel safe? So that's the question that I'm posing to my system when I'm practicing these days. How can I make you feel safe? And then the tools that you already know that you can use to help your system feel safe. Long, slow, steady breath. You guys all know that one. Sustained attention. We've all had that experience where we're in a conversation and we're sharing something meaningful and it feels like the person isn't quite there with us. And that can be so frustrating. And so we think about our practice as a conversation. Like the minute you're out planning your day, the minute you start replaying a conversation from last week, you're no longer there listening. And so there doesn't have to be judgment and shame in that. It's natural. We're going to pop out of our practice. We're going to pop out of the moment. And then you just notice that that's what happened and crawl back inside your own skin. Maybe your top leg comes into constructive rest. Maybe your bottom leg does. So at any point in practice this morning, if you're feeling like, you need to just stay longer for things to really figure out how to unwind, please feel free to stay. But I'm going to keep us moving along, so you can join or you can just stay where you're at any point. So we can unwind, come back to constructive rest. Notice your imprint. Give your knees a hug. And then rock up to a seat. Take your blanket and we're gonna roll up a back bolster. So depending on your body, you might make something pretty big or not. So you could have something like this. It could be half the size of this. It could be one turn of the blanket. Sometimes if your posture is set up, and I don't think anybody on this call is that way, but if you're like this, or maybe if you're sharing some of these practices with someone that you know and their posture is more like this, just the shape of the spine is enough when you lie on your back that the spine like is a bolster. So you could just might not need anything at all. You're sharing it with someone. I always thought of this with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She had such that just lying on her back would probably have been a back bolster. We're going to put this right in the upper back. Maybe a block behind the head. I like the block as a way to start, kind of easing in, and then as the body kind of gets used to draping over the blanket like this, you could turn it down a notch, you could take it out completely. Knees could stay bent, or you could extend the legs out, and then it's just like, okay, what's calling for attention? Can you still breathe? If not, you back out. That might mean Unrolling the blanket, that might mean higher support under the head. Let's unwind a little bit through the arms. So feel your hands. And I want you to imagine all the bones, all the joints of your hands could release each other a little bit. And your hands could just spread out wide like baking cookies. And then feel into your wrists and imagine that your wrists could release the tension enough that you could almost release your hands from your forearms. They could float away a little bit. Feel the bones of your forearms spread out. There's 2 long ones there. And then feel into your elbows. And again, imagine the joints, all the muscle, all the tissue holding those joints maybe really tightly together could just let go a bit. So your forearms could float out from your upper arms. And then do the same with your shoulders. All the muscle, all the tissue, maybe holding so tightly in your shoulders could just unwind a bit. So your arms could float out from your chest. And then you could replicate that exercise through the joints of your spine. Especially your neck. Maybe your hips. And if you're ready to move on, we'll move the blanket about halfway down the back. So not into that kidney, wing, back, bottom, waist area yet, but somewhere between there and where we are right now. As things start to settle down, go ahead and take your right hand and you're going to reach down to the top of your right seat. And you're just going to gently guide that forward towards your feet. And then you'll do the same thing on the other side. So you're going to reach down, take your left seat. You can even just do both. If you lift your hips up a little bit, think about lengthening the flesh of your seat forward, making some space for the lower back, and then you can put your hips back down. And then you can slide back so that the blanket is in the backs of the waist, in that kidney wing area right below your back bottom ribs. So right in your lumbar spine, curve of your lower back. I always start out with my knees bent here. If that still doesn't feel like, if it's still too much, move the blanket down a little bit so it just catches the top of the hips. You can kind of wriggle yourself back a little. So you're walking your upper spine away from your lower spine. Your hips might be on the ground, they might be floating. Can you imagine the roots of your sit bones here? Growing off the back edges, growing off the fronts. Just feeling into either of those roots help make this more comfortable. And then we're going to roll over to the side. And if the blanket is too much, you feel it, a lot of pressure in your floating ribs, just unroll it a little bit. So the blanket's going to be in the waist. You might want something under your head. You could use a block. We're going to step the top foot in front of the bottom thigh, above the bottom knee. And then you're going to hold on to that top ankle with your bottom hand. And then this might be enough. So if this feels very intense, you're just going to start that conversation, start listening in, keep breathing. Maybe take your top arm up. And even though the arm is working, can you remember all the space between all the joints and reach up a little further? And then that top arm will open out any amount into a twist. So some of you might be able to get your shoulder on the ground. Some of you just, taking the hand out to like 1, 2 o'clock is enough. Inevitably, there's going to be something talking to you. Or maybe in the outer hip, maybe in the ribs, maybe in the back. And so just imagine you could crawl right into that spot that's talking to you, and then just sit there and hold it with your attention. And if there's some old emotion that bubbles out of there, meeting that with compassion. If you start to feel kind of irritated, again, meeting that with compassion. If you're like, I don't feel anything, then just be grateful and try to stay present. Sometimes it's harder to stay present when there's not a lot of big sensation going on. Sometimes when there is a big sensation, we want to just run from it. And so we tune out right away. So observing all these things is just part of the practice. I noticed when I was practicing this morning, one side was like, whatever, like I didn't feel much at all. And one side, I couldn't even take the arm up to the ceiling within the first couple minutes of the pose. It took a really long time for things to start to quiet down. And then feel into your waist resting on the blanket. Are you able to fully let it rest? When this side feels done, you'll unwind. Come back to constructive rest. You can windshield wiper your knees from side to side. You kind of like wriggle your spine from side to side. And then we'll do the other side. So again, blanket in the waist. Knees bent. Top foot's gonna step above the bottom knee. Maybe the arm reaches up. Maybe the arm reaches out. And there's layers to this stuff, right? So you have this first area that's like really loud. And then once you address that and that quiets down, it reveals like there's something else talking that was maybe a little quieter underneath. You just keep digging down. Our lives are so outwardly focused. We're so used to just kind of running on to the next thing, on to the next thing. It could be so easy to go through life and never scratch under the surface, ever. Never like take a look at some of this internal stuff. And even in the beginning of this pandemic, where we're all just forced to just stay in place, you could still very easily avoid kind of looking underneath, quieting down, really kind of looking underneath. Even your yoga practice could be a way to kind of like run from some stuff, move faster, keep going. And so I've been finding these slower practices and this process of just asking the system, like, how can I make you feel safe? To be so important in looking at old patterns and letting go of them, or maybe just starting to know that they're there because things are so quiet and still. So we've been moving a little slower these last couple of weeks. Hopefully you're finding it helpful. When you're done with this side, we're going to unwind. If you're like, no, I just really want to move faster, I totally get it. Totally get it. Stay with it here. So we're going to cross back into child's pose. Feel the roots coming off the back edges of your sit bones. Remember, those roots drop down, down, deep into the earth, and then slightly forward. And those anchors might help the whole back side of the body spread out wider and longer. Maybe your fingers are able to crawl a little bit further forward. Feel the roots coming from the inner edges of the sit bones down and then diagonally back. Let the front side of the body fill up all the space that the back body created. And we'll take a nice long breath in here. We'll exhale, lifting the hips up into a long cat pose, reaching all the bones of the spine up towards the ceiling, and the hips continue to move forward, pelvis tips forward, and start to kind of pour a back bend up the spine, bend the elbows as much as you need to as you open the chest. And then we'll just take it back into child's pose. Breathe in. Breathe out, long cat. Inhale, back bend, cobra, low cobra, maybe a sphinx pose. And then exhale, child's pose. Do one more like that. Breathe in, back side of the body long and broad. Exhale, breathe out. Inhale, open the chest, open the heart. And then exhale, child's pose. Inhale, tabletop. And then we'll just wriggle the spine. You can go side to side. You can make big circles with the rib cage. And we'll come into downward facing dog. Good, so feel the roots. Roots of your sit bones reaching up and back. And you can imagine the same 4 roots that you grew down from your sit bones growing off your heels. Root down through the webbing of your fingers. Walk out the heels. Maybe rock the hips from side to side. And then we're going to bring the right knee into the chest and step forward in between the hands. Release the back knee down. You can always use blocks under the hands here. We're going to release the back toes. And we're going to slide the front knee forward over the front toes. And I want you to imagine leaving your back leg behind. So your back knee stays put. Your front knee slides forward over the front toes. And so you feel like a little bit of a drag coming from your front left hip back. So we're just going to stay with that. Again, hands on blocks, hands on the floor, maybe tented fingers. Feel into your back toes. Imagine the toes and the rest of the bones of your foot could release a bit and spread out. Feel the same through the ankle, back knee, and back hip. And then what needs your attention? Maybe it's not the back leg at all. Maybe it's that front leg that needs your attention, the front hip, front hamstring. And then you can hold your front knee. And is there anything that would help you feel more stable in this upright position? Maybe that you can imagine roots coming down off your sit bones here. Maybe the arms reach up. You feel all that space through the shoulder joints, the elbows, the wrists, the hands. Maybe there's a little bit of a back bend here. You could imagine that blanket roll still in your upper back. What if you could lift up and curl back around it? And then we'll bring the hands down. You're going to tuck the back toes under, lift the back knee up. Feel grounded through the feet. Inhale, come up into your high lunge, crescent lunge. And then hands come down and step to the front of your mat. Inhale, lengthen your heart forward. Exhale, fold down. Push through the feet, feel the roots of your heels. Inhale, stand all the way up. Exhale, hands to your heart. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lengthen your heart forward. Exhale, step back, plank. Breathe in. Breathe out, lower down. Back bend as you inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Good, breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale, step your left foot forward. And we're going to hold here. So hands wherever they need to be to give you enough space to be with this. Rather than keeping the front knee over the front ankle to start, we're going to let it slide forward over the front toes. So you're asking a little bit more of this back hip. You can take a little journey through the joints of your back leg. You're feeling through the toes, the ankle, the knee, the hip. Maybe it's not about your back leg at all. Maybe it's the front leg that needs to be listened to. So the back knee is down to start. Yes, your back knee is on the ground to start here. Just here. And then maybe hold the front knee. Maybe arms up. Maybe there's a little bit of a back bend. Maybe there's a big back bend. Nice work, you guys. Is there any tension that you can release from your shoulder joints? It might help your arms swim a little higher. Good, and then hands down, tuck the back toes, lift the back knee up. Feel your feet nice and stable, and then crescent lunge, come on up. High lunge. Gaze at one spot. Hands down, step forward. Inhale, lengthen your heart forward. Exhale, fold. Inhale, stand up, arms up. Exhale, hands to your heart. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Good, long spine. Inhale, look forward. Exhale, plank. Breathe in. Breathe out, lower down. Back bend as you inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Breathe in. Breathe out, right foot forward, back knee down. You keep the back toes tucked. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, hands down, step forward. Stand up, inhale. Hands to your heart, exhale. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, long spine. Right foot steps back. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, plank. Lower halfway or all the way onto your belly. Back bend as you inhale. Downward facing dog, exhale. Breathe in. Breathe out, left foot steps forward. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, step forward. Inhale, stand up. Hands to heart, exhale. Inhale, reach up. Exhale, fold. Back bend, inhale. Lengthen your heart forward, inhale. Plank, exhale. Lower halfway or onto your belly. Back bend as you inhale, and we're gonna hold here. So hold your cobra, low cobra. You can lower down into Sphinx pose if you like. Take your shoulder blades back and down. Think about sliding your heart forward away from your legs and leaving your legs behind. Fronts of the armpits lift up. Good. Imagine wrapping your upper back around a blanket roll. And your legs are strong, so feel both legs lengthening back behind you. Knees pressing down a bit. So good, you guys. You still breathing? Nice. Relax your eyebrows. Take one more breath in, and then exhale, downward facing dog. Good. All right, take another breath in, get nice and long through your arms. Exhale, walk or hop your feet up to your hands. Lengthen your heart forward as you inhale. Fold down, exhale. Stand up, inhale. And hands to your heart, exhale. Feel the inseams of the legs pull together. Feel the roots of the heels. Back roots dropping down and forward, allowing your back body to feel nice and stable and loom bigger behind you. Front roots dropping down and back, letting your front body wriggle up and fill up the space of your back body. Those inner roots drop down and diagonally back. And for me, that feels like just a release right up through all the core. Frees up my breath. And the outer roots drop down and try to find each other as they reach in. We're going to keep all of that nice and stable through the right foot. Lift the left knee. Open it up. Set it for your tree pose. Knees peeling open. Foot's pushing into the standing legs pushing back into the foot. So you have this nice static connection. Maybe take the arms up. Feel all those roots through your standing foot. Maybe you can find a little bit of a back bend here. Maybe the arms just float out nice and free through the joints. Bring the hands together at the heart. Stand on both feet. Just shake it out. And then again, inseams of the legs together. Feel the roots. We'll lift the other knee. Open it up. Foot and the leg. Press against each other. Maybe the arms reach out. Maybe there's a back bend. Maybe the gaze just turns up. You can find somewhere on the ceiling to look at. Nice and stable through the roots. Hands down. Stand on both feet. Shake it out. And then we'll come into constructive rest on our back. Notice your imprint. Notice your breath. If it feels comfortable, extend the legs out straight. Interlace the hands and hold the base of the skull. Using your hands, turn your head side to side. Maybe bring your chin a little closer to your chest. And then just guide the base of the skull a little bit away from the neck. Put the head back down. Use a blanket under the head if you need to. Arms down by your sides. Release and melt the bones of your hands out wide. Just pull out. Feel into your wrists. And imagine you could unwind any tension from the wrists. So you could almost release your hands from your forearms right at the wrists. Feel your way up your forearms into your elbows. And just imagine unwrapping any holding in the elbows, letting that excess tension go so that you could almost release your forearms from your elbows. And then walk your way up your upper arms into your shoulders. Just kind of rummage around inside your shoulder joints. Is there anything you could let go of? Could you imagine letting go enough that you could release your arms from your torso at the shoulders? Release through the armpits, through the chest, through the upper back. And then if it's comfortable, extend the legs out straight if they're not already. And feel your way down into your feet. Imagine you could release any pulling from the joints of your toes. Your toes could spread out wide, your foot could broaden. Feeling into your ankles, could you release any tension from the ankles? So you could imagine really releasing your feet from your legs. Feel your way through the lower legs into the knees. Could you loosen some of the tension around your knee joints? So you could imagine releasing your lower legs from your thighs. And then feel your way up your thighs into your hip joints. Could you loosen some of the gripping, the tension from your hips? enough so that you could imagine releasing your thighs from your pelvis at the hip joints. Feel your tailbone. What if it were as free as a tail? Kind of wag around in all directions, drop off below your sacrum. Can you feel into the joints of your sacrum? Where the backs of your hips connect with your spine? Is there tension you could imagine releasing from those joints? And then we'll feel our way up the front of the spine, through the joints of the lumbar spine, 5 pretty hefty bones. In each joint, imagine space. Feel your way up the front of the thoracic spine, bones that connect to your rib cage. In between those 12 bones, imagine space. And then feel your way up your cervical spine, bones of your neck, and in between those 7 bones, imagine space. Re-release the base of your skull from your spine, just like you did with your hands, but now just kind of feeling in, doing it with your attention. And then imagine all the bones of your skull could unfuse a bit and float out, giving space. Can you embody all the space that you've created under your skin? Are there parts of you that extend beyond the skin? From this spacious place, remember your intention. Take a long breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. Hug the knees in and roll towards either side. Press up to a seat. Bring your hands over the center of your chest. And we'll close out practice with one Om. Nice work, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna unmute you in case you want to say bye, say hi.